you your cape and missed a spot. Do your damn job. No excuses. Get down on your knees and clean it properly.
She was told to kneel, lower, scrub harder, not in some dark alley, not in a forgotten corner of the building, but inside a spotless executive restroom. In her own company, a black woman stood there in a tailored blazer, sleeves rolled up, holding a mop she never asked for. Her presence had already been judged, her worth already decided. To them, she was invisible, just another janitor who didn't belong on this floor. The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His tone carried something colder than anger, entitlement. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself, didn't explain who she was. She simply nodded and took the mop, because sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Sometimes you don't interrupt disrespect. You document it. Every order, every insult, every second of arrogance. What no one in that restroom understood was that this moment wasn't breaking her. It was exposing them, because the woman they were humiliating wasn't the help. She was the new CEO, and before the day was over, the same hands pointing down at her would be scrambling to save their careers, as everything they thought they controlled began to fall apart. Nadia Carter didn't correct them. She observed. From the moment she stepped into Apex Dynamics, she moved through the building like a shadow no one thought to question. The badge around her neck had been handed to her at the front desk without a second glance. No welcome, no directions, just a quick point down the hallway, as if she were expected to already know her place. She walked slowly, not because she was unsure, but because she was listening. In the open offices, conversations shifted when she passed. Voices lowered. Smiles disappeared. People spoke about efficiency and cost-cutting with a casual cruelty, laughing about departments they planned to clean out. When they thought leadership wasn't around, empathy vanished first. Nadia noticed who was greeted by name and who wasn't greeted at all, who was interrupted mid-sentence, who apologized for taking up space. In one department, a senior manager snapped his fingers at a young intern, demanding coffee without looking up from his screen. In another, a woman with years of experience was talked over until she simply stopped trying to contribute. No one noticed her silence, except Nadia. She passed conference rooms where decisions were made loudly, confidently, and carelessly. Numbers mattered. People didn't. The language was polished, but the intent was raw. And then there was the restroom incident. The moment when authority mistook dignity for submission, when a man felt comfortable enough to command her to clean what was already spotless. Nadia didn't feel small in that moment. She felt clear, because she wasn't lost inside Apex Dynamics. She was mapping it. She was identifying who respected power and who abused it, who led with integrity and who led with fear. When people believe you're invisible, they don't perform. They reveal. And as Nadia continued walking those halls, quiet and unchallenged, she wasn't being tested by the company. The company was being tested by her. And every look, every dismissive word, every careless joke was being carefully, silently recorded. In the executive restroom, humiliation became a performance. The room smelled of citrus cleaner and polished marble, untouched, immaculate, unnecessary to clean. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors reflected status more than faces. Gold-trimmed fixtures gleamed under soft lighting meant to impress investors, not reveal character. Yet, character revealed itself anyway. The man who started it didn't shout. He never had to. His authority had been practiced long enough to move without noise. A senior executive, expensive suit, confident posture, voice trained to command without question. He looked at Nadia, the way people look at objects meant to serve a purpose. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing to a floor that already shined. She hadn't even been holding cleaning supplies then. Someone else laughed. A quick, nervous chuckle. Not cruel enough to stand out, not brave enough to stop it. Another executive stepped closer and placed a bottle of cleaner into Nadia's hand. Not roughly, casually, as if this was normal, as if she belonged here, just not the way she actually did. "You people always rush through," the man continued. "Take your time this round. You people, The phrase landed heavier than the bottle. Nadia looked at the floor, not because she felt small, but because she needed the angle. Her phone rested in her blazer pocket. Camera quietly recording, screen dark, microphone open. She had activated it earlier, instinctively. Experience had taught her that moments like these rarely came with warnings. She knelt, not in surrender. In strategy, the room shifted. Laughter softened into murmurs. One executive leaned against the counter, watching. A client, unfamiliar, uncomfortable, glanced between them, uncertain whether to intervene or pretend this wasn't happening. Silence filled the gaps where courage should have been. Nadia scrubbed, slowly, deliberately. Every swipe of the cloth echoed, louder than words. She felt eyes on her back, felt judgment sharpen itself into permission. This was power without witnesses. Or so they thought. Power that thrived when consequences felt distant. The executive wasn't finished. "You should be grateful to work in a place like this," he said. "Some people would kill for a job cleaning executive floors." Grateful. Nadia's hand tightened around the cloth. She had spent years earning degrees, negotiating mergers, leading companies out of collapse. She had walked into rooms where billion-dollar decisions were made and left with signatures that reshaped industries. She had learned to read balance sheets and human behavior with equal precision, and here she was, reduced, in their eyes, to someone who should feel thankful for humiliation. One of the men asked where she was usually assigned. Another joked about budgets being wasted on unnecessary hires. Someone mentioned how standards had slipped lately. No one said her name. No one asked it, because names humanize, and dehumanization makes cruelty easier. Nadia kept scrubbing. The sound of fabric against marble became a quiet metronome, marking each second of exposure. She noticed everything. The way the executive smirked when others laughed. The way one woman stared at her reflection instead of the scene. The way the client's jaw tightened but stayed closed. Silence did the most damage. Not hers. Theirs. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of choices. And every person in that restroom was choosing who they were when they believed power wasn't watching. The executive leaned down closer. "Next time, wear something that actually looks like a uniform," he said. "It's confusing." Nadia looked up then, just briefly, not with anger, not with tears, with calm. It unsettled him just for a second, but arrogance recovered quickly. She returned to scrubbing. Inside her pocket, the phone captured everything. The voices, the insults, the laughter, the pauses where someone could have stepped in and didn't. This wasn't about cleaning. It was about dominance needing an audience. The restroom door opened and closed twice. People came and went, absorbing the scene and deciding, consciously or not, to keep moving. No one asked if she was okay. No one questioned why a janitor was being ordered around in a space already clean. Power doesn't require dirt to justify itself. It only requires permission. Minutes passed, then more. Finally, the executive checked his watch. "That'll do," he said, as if dismissing a tool. "Make sure it stays this way." He walked out first. The others followed, laughter fading down the hallway. The client lingered for half a second, looked back at Nadia, opened his mouth, then closed it and left. The door shut. Silence returned, real silence this time. Nadia stood slowly. Her knees didn't ache. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart was steady. She slipped the phone out, stopped the recording, and looked at the screen. Clear audio, clear video, clear faces. She straightened her blazer, smoothed the sleeves, and caught her reflection in the mirror. She didn't look broken. She looked prepared. Because sometimes justice doesn't interrupt the moment. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it watches. And sometimes it documents everything, patiently, until the people who mistook cruelty for authority realized too late that they were never alone, and that power, when exposed, always tells on itself. When the meeting alert buzzed, Nadia stepped into the conference room. For the first time that day, she didn't move quietly. She walked in with her shoulders back, her pace steady, her presence unmistakable. The glass walls revealed a long table already filled. executives in tailored suits, department heads scrolling through tablets, legal counsel seated near the screen. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as she entered. A few faces showed confusion. Some showed annoyance. One showed recognition, followed by fear. The man from the restroom froze. For a brief, fragile second, his mind searched for a version of reality where this made sense, where this woman could still be invisible, where authority still belonged to him. But reality didn't bend. Nadia took the seat at the head of the table. The room went silent. "I'm Nadia Carter," she said calmly. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, I am the Chief Executive Officer of Apex Dynamics." No emphasis, no drama, just truth. A screen behind her lit up. Her name, her credentials, her appointment confirmation, the silence they had relied on, the silence that protected them, excused them, empowered them, began to suffocate them instead. The restroom executive opened his mouth, closed it, adjusted his tie. Nadia didn't look at him yet. She looked at the room. "I spent a day observing," she continued, "not from reports, not from filtered summaries, but from inside your hallways, your offices, your conversations. A few people shifted uncomfortably. You were yourselves today," she said. "And for that, I appreciate your honesty." She tapped a button. Emails appeared on the screen. Internal messages, Slack threads, jokes disguised as efficiency, comments about culture fit, decisions framed as cost-cutting that somehow always landed on the same shoulders. Then the audio played. A familiar voice echoed through the room. "You people always rush through." The man from the restroom went pale. Faces turned toward him. Then away. No one laughed this time. "This," Nadia said, finally meeting his eyes, "is what power sounds like when it thinks no one is listening." She gestured again. HR reports surfaced. Complaints buried under procedural language. Dismissed as misunderstandings. Delayed until employees gave up. Patterns became undeniable when placed side by side. The data told a story they had spent years fragmenting. Every whisper disguised as policy, Nadia said. Every violation minimized as personality. Every silence mistaken for consent. She paused. "The silence you depended on," she continued, "has become evidence." Phones vibrated around the table. Legal counsel received messages. So did board members, external auditors, partner firms, acquisition attorneys. Nadia hadn't just documented behavior. She had activated consequences. "Effective immediately," she said. "All internal investigations previously closed without resolution are being reopened under independent oversight." One executive stood up. "This feels aggressive." Nadia turned to him slowly. "So does discrimination," she replied. "But only one of those has been tolerated here." She clicked again. A list of finalized acquisitions appeared. Companies Apex had absorbed quietly over the years. Alongside them, revised leadership structures. "Some of you are no longer employees of Apex Dynamics," she said evenly. "Your access has been revoked. Security will escort you out." A sharp inhale. A scraping chair. The restroom executive stood. "You can't do this based on..." She held up her hand. "Based on what?" she asked. "Recorded evidence? Witness corroboration? Documented patterns?" He faltered. She leaned forward slightly. "Based on who you were when you thought power wasn't watching." Security entered. Not rushed, not loud, efficient. As the man was escorted out, he didn't protest. He didn't apologize. He avoided eye contact, as if invisibility could still protect him. It couldn't. Nadia turned back to the room. "This isn't revenge," she said. "It's correction." She outlined the changes methodically. Leadership restructuring, mandatory accountability training run by external firms, anonymous reporting systems with real enforcement, compensation audits to address inequity buried under titles. This wasn't emotional. It was surgical. "This company has relied on silence," she continued. "Silence from those harmed. Silence from those who witnessed. Silence from those who benefited." She let that sit. Apex Dynamics will not be built on silence anymore. Some people nodded. Others stared down at their hands. A few looked relieved. like something long held had finally been named. The client from the restroom entered quietly and took a seat near the door. Nadia acknowledged him with a brief nod. "Thank you for staying," she said. "Your statement has been added to the record." He swallowed. "I should have spoken sooner." "Yes," Nadia replied gently. "But you're speaking now." The meeting continued. Contracts reviewed, legal pathways confirmed, timelines established. Calls were made in real time. Lawyers activated clauses written for moments exactly like this. Acquisitions were finalized not just to grow the company, but to reset its foundation. Every action was deliberate. When the meeting finally adjourned, the room felt different. Lighter, heavier, honest. As people filed out, some avoided Nadia's gaze. Others stopped to thank her, quietly and perfectly. She remained seated for a moment after everyone left. Alone, she exhaled, not from relief, from resolve. Because today wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something the company had never truly known: accountability. And for the first time, Apex Dynamics wasn't being led by the loudest voice in the room. It was being led by the one who listened, watched, and refused to mistake silence for weakness ever again. When security was called on her, they expected compliance. They expected embarrassment, a quiet exit, a problem removed before it became inconvenient. They didn't expect the elevator doors to open behind them. The soft ding cut through the tension, like a blade. Security officers stepped forward, hands already near their radios, eyes fixed on Nadia, still standing calmly near the conference corridor, tablet in hand, posture unshaken. "Ma'am," one of them said, "rehearse politeness masking authority. We're going to need you to come with us." Executives watched from a distance, some curious, some smug, some relieved that this issue was finally being handled. Then the elevator doors slid fully open, and the room changed. Out stepped the board chair, two external legal partners, a compliance officer from a federal oversight firm, and behind them, the interim COO, whose appointment had been finalized just hours earlier. No one spoke, because power recognizes power instantly. The head of security froze. The executives went still, like statues realizing too late they were being observed. Nadia turned slowly, reached into her blazer, and clipped her badge into full view. Nadia Carter, Chief Executive Officer. The silence that followed was absolute, not the awkward kind, not the uncomfortable kind, the kind that happens when reality overrides denial. The man who had ordered her to scrub the restroom floor took a step back. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His confidence, once so effortless, drained from his face as if someone had pulled a plug. Security straightened immediately. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the officer said, voice tight. "We were told." "Yes," Nadia replied calmly. "You were." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She turned toward the executives. "This is the moment," she said evenly, "where confusion becomes clarity." The board chair stepped forward. "Thank you, Nadia," he said. "We'll take it from here." Phones buzzed, then stopped. Access privileges were being revoked in real time. Emails failed to send. Calendars vanished. Building permissions blinked red. One by one, screens went dark. The executives looked down at their devices. Panic setting in as titles they had worn like armor dissolved into nothing. "What is happening?" someone whispered. "Accountability," Nadia replied. Security received new instructions through their earpieces. Phones were confiscated, gently, professionally, without argument. Laptops followed. ID badges were unclipped. Doors once accessible were no longer theirs to open. No shouting, no spectacle, just systems doing exactly what they were designed to do. Once the right people were finally in control, the man from the restroom tried to speak. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "We can talk about this privately." Nadia met his eyes. "We already did," she said. "You just didn't realize it." She gestured subtly. The compliance officer stepped forward and read from a prepared document. Violations, timestamps, corroborated accounts. Language stripped of emotion, sharpened by evidence. Each sentence closed another door. HR managers stood frozen, realizing the files they had buried were now being reopened by outside authority. Executives who had relied on plausible deniability understood too late that silence had not protected them. It had condemned them. One woman began to cry softly. Another man stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The client who had witnessed the restroom incident stepped forward. "I submitted my statement," he said. And the video... Heads turned. Nadia hadn't needed him to speak. But the truth multiplies when courage spreads. "This company," Nadia said, addressing the room, "has confused performance with permission." She walked slowly now, measured steps echoing against polished floors. "You believed results excuse behavior. That power erased accountability. That silence meant approval." She stopped. "It doesn't." She didn't lecture. She didn't threaten. She simply explained what was already happening. Effective immediately, the board chair announced. "The following individuals are terminated for cause. All severance packages are void. Legal proceedings will follow." Names were read, one by one. Each name landed like a verdict. Security escorted them out, not rushed, not humiliated, just removed. The way systems remove failures once they're acknowledged. As they passed Nadia, some avoided her gaze. One didn't. The man from the restroom stopped. "You planned this," he said quietly. Nadia looked at him for a long moment. "No," she replied. "You did." He was escorted away. When the doors finally closed, the hallway felt hollow, stripped of arrogance, echoing with consequences. Remaining employees stood scattered, unsure whether to speak, breathe, or move. Nadia turned to them. "This isn't a purge," she said. "It's a reset." Some exhaled. Others nodded, eyes wet. "For years," she continued, "many of you survived this place instead of growing in it. You learn when to stay quiet, when to shrink, when to look away." She paused. "That ends today." No applause, no cheering, just something heavier. Relief. "Accountability doesn't need theatrics," Nadia said. "It needs systems. And courage." She looked around. "And now you're both." The board chair thanked her again. Lawyers finalized documents. Compliance officers secured records. But Nadia didn't stay for the congratulations. She walked back toward the elevator. Alone. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back at her. Steady, composed, unchanged. Not because the day hadn't affected her, but because she had refused to let humiliation define her. Truth had entered the room. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. And once truth takes its seat at the table, there is no returning to the lie that power answers to no one. The investigations didn't arrive with headlines. They came with emails, calendars, carefully worded notices that carried permanent weight. External auditors moved through apex dynamics methodically, not hunting for scandal, but tracing truth. Files were reopened, timelines reconstructed, patterns mapped across years instead of months. What had once been dismissed as isolated incidents became undeniable when placed side by side. Careers ended quietly. No rumors, no leaks, no dramatic exits. Just proof. Resignations were accepted, licenses reviewed, professional boards notified. People who had built power by hiding behind silence discovered that silence could no longer protect them. And then, something rare happened. The company changed. Not in slogans. In structure. Layers of leadership were flattened. Decision-making no longer flowed through the same narrow corridors. Accountability was distributed instead of deferred. Reporting systems were rebuilt. So complaints didn't disappear into procedure. They reached people with authority to act. Maintenance workers were promoted into operational leadership roles, not as symbols, but as recognition. They knew the building better than anyone. They understood how systems failed quietly long before they collapsed publicly. Equity stopped being a promise and became a metric. Compensation was audited, advancement tracked, outcomes measured. Disparities were no longer explained away. They were corrected. Nadia didn't position herself as a savior. She positioned the company to function without one. She walked the halls openly now. People greeted her, not with fear, not with worship, but with trust. Conversations changed. Voices rose where whispers once lived. The restroom remained, unrenovated, unrebranded. No plaque, no press release, just a space that carried memory. Employees passed it knowing what had happened there, not as gossip, but as institutional truth, a reminder of what power looks like when unchecked, and what it looks like when it's corrected. One afternoon, Nadia stood there alone. She didn't feel anger. She felt clarity, because justice didn't roar in that room. It knelt quietly and waited. The mop was gone. The mirror remained. And in that reflection, she saw something stronger than revenge. She saw finality. Months later, Apex Dynamics released its annual report. No mention of scandal. No names. No defensiveness. Just data. Change. Results. Investors noticed. So did competitors. Culture, it turned out, was not a liability. It was leverage. Nadia addressed the company once, not with a speech, but with a message. Justice doesn't need volume. It read, it needs systems that work even when no one is watching. People saved it, printed it, lived by it, and the story that began with humiliation ended with something far more enduring than applause. Transformation. The restroom that once symbolized humiliation became something else entirely, a quiet marker in the company's history, not of shame, but of the moment silence stopped protecting cruelty and started protecting truth. Because justice doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be final. Power doesn't reveal itself in boardrooms. It reveals itself in how people treat those they believe can't respond. Nadia didn't win by shouting. She won by letting truth speak louder than ego. This story isn't just about racism or titles. It's about silence, who it protects and who it destroys. Because systems don't fall from outrage. They fall from evidence. If this story made you uncomfortable, that's the point. Truth doesn't whisper. It waits, and then it dismantles.